It was Halloween night of 2016. I was 23 at the time and lived in my own two-story house. Now, Halloween in 2016 was a lot different from anything I'd seen before. There were a few months back then where all anyone could talk about were these killer clown sightings and things of that nature. Of course, that year Halloween took place right when the talk of killer clowns was at its peak. I remember a lot of parents not allowing their kids to do any trick-or-treating that year because of it. I myself didn't really have anything planned. I was going to hang out with a couple of friends while handing out candy to the kids that came by, but that was pretty much it. Eventually, toward the end of the night, when the doorbell ring started to slow down, the three of us, which was me and my two friends, who I'll call Thomas and Kenny for the sake of this story, started talking about general scary Halloween stuff. At one point, Thomas brought up a haunted house down the street. He explained how we should go and see how scary it was. Now, I figured I was to the point where I was too old for all that kind of stuff, but Thomas said it was the real deal. Not that scary, but not scary enough to keep the kids away type of haunted house. Rather, this thing was legit, or at least that's what he said. So, we all agreed to try it out. It was about a 5-minute walk to get there. I didn't say this out loud, but when we did get there, it didn't look like all that Thomas had made it out to be. Honestly, it looked like some teenagers had set it up in only a few hours. We walked inside, and I quickly realized the place was decently packed. There were a lot of other people walking through. The whole thing wasn't that scary. I got jump scared a couple of times, but that was about the extent of it. Though, that was until I saw these three clowns. I have to admit the costumes were really good. You could tell they spent a lot of time on them. What was weird, though, was how after they scared us, they continued through the house following us. All of the other people dressed up would just scare us once and wait for the next people to walk through, but these guys literally followed us until we got back outside. This put me on edge, but I didn't say anything. We all walked back to my house, and shortly after, Thomas and Kenny would leave. Maybe 30 minutes after they left, my doorbell went off. Obviously, it wasn't uncommon to get late-night trick-or-treaters, but by this point, it was around midnight. There was no way this was some kid looking for candy, so I ignored it, but just a minute later, I heard footsteps walking around my backyard. I was now just annoyed. In my mind, I was almost positive it was just some teenagers trying to mess with me. I flickered my back porch light on and off multiple times as a way to scare them away. I looked out the window to see if it worked, and that's when I saw three men in clown costumes running into the darkness. My mind instantly jumped to earlier that night at the haunted house. But how could they figure out where I lived unless? Well, unless they followed me back home. I went upstairs and texted a group chat with me, Thomas, and Kenny, saying, "Guys, I think those three clowns from the haunted house were just in my backyard." Kenny would send a text back saying, "Dude, call the cops." I figured that wasn't a bad idea. At the very least, the cops come here and I file a report for trespassing. As I was dialing 911, the heart-dropping sound of one of the windows from downstairs shattering filled my ears. My phone was still ringing by this point. I locked my bedroom door and hid in the closet. When an operator answered, I whispered that some men in clown costumes had just broken into my house not even a minute ago. I was told to lock myself in a room and hide while staying on the line. A few moments passed when I swear I heard footsteps slowly making their way upstairs. I tried to stay as silent as I could, but for the life of me, I couldn't keep my breathing down. This went on for what felt like forever when the relieving sound of police sirens could be heard outside in the street. shortly thereafter followed by quick footsteps downstairs and out the back door. After the police made their presence in the house known, I would meet them downstairs. I explained how I heard the intruders leave through the back door, and they would call for backup. Those 3 clowns would not be found that night, and because they were wearing masks the whole time, there's a good chance they'll never be identified. I was left with a broken kitchen window, but surprisingly, nothing was stolen. Though I don't necessarily see this as a good thing, as it proves they weren't there to rob the place. They likely had much worse intentions. Why they targeted me specifically, though, I'm still not sure. When I was 18, I threw a house party at my parents' house for Halloween. It was a closed invite. When I was 18, I threw a house party at my parents' house for Halloween. It was a closed invite, meaning I told people not to bring strangers. That was a rule my parents gave me. They were not at the house that weekend, which was why I was able to throw the party, with another rule being the place needed to be even cleaner than it was before the party. I invited around 50 people, and probably around 40 ended up showing up. The party started around 6 o'clock. It was starting to get dark out. It would be partially in the backyard and partially on the first floor. My parents left me money for refreshments like sodas and food to leave in the kitchen for people to take. I told my parents it would be a non-alcoholic party, but I think they knew that was a load. My friend, who's a few years older than me, brought his DJ equipment to DJ, and the party was in full swing by dark. Everyone seemed to listen and not bring strangers because I recognized everyone. Just about everyone came up to me and greeted me after entering. I didn't drink too much because it was my party, and I wanted to be somewhat responsible, but everyone else was getting drunker the later the night went. Eventually, one of my friends came out of the house after getting food, and he asked who that guy in the skeleton bodysuit inside the house was. I didn't recall seeing anyone in a bodysuit costume, so I went inside the house, where there were a few people hanging out in the kitchen. I asked if they saw someone wearing a skeleton bodysuit, and someone told me, yeah, it seemed like he was snooping around the house. I grew concerned when I heard this and asked if anyone invited him or knew who it was. No one inside knew him. I looked around the house and then found him. He was walking down the stairs. I asked, "Who are you?" and he said, "Mike." I was using the bathroom upstairs. It was a really deep voice. He sounded older. His frame was also a bit larger, not muscular, just a stockier-looking build. I asked who invited you, and he said, "Tom." I didn't know a single Tom, so I asked, "Who's Tom?" Then I just asked him if he could take his mask off. He didn't listen or even respond. "Tom." I didn't know a single Tom, so I asked, "Who's Tom?" Then I just asked him if he could take his mask off. He didn't listen or even respond. He just walked past me towards the front door, then he left. I ran upstairs to check if any of the rooms had been gone through and if anything had been stolen. All the doors upstairs, except for the bathroom door, were closed, and after a quick look, it seemed nothing was stolen. So I went to lock the front door, and then I told a bunch of my friends about how weird that just was. I went outside to ask a few friends if they knew who invited the skeleton guy, and not a single person knew who it was. Eventually, I gave it a rest. The party was winding down around midnight. Most people were starting to leave. A few close friends stayed behind a little later to help clean up. After all was said and done, it was a successful party. When everyone was gone, I started getting ready for bed. One of my friends, Vinny, stayed over on the couch downstairs. After brushing my teeth and changing into pajamas, After brushing my teeth and changing into pajamas, I decided to go hang out with Vinny in the living room for a while. We had some drinks and just watched funny YouTube videos on TV. My little sister, who was 14, was asleep by now. She didn't hang outside with the party because she was too young. We were being quiet so as not to wake her, but when Vinny and I both heard noises from upstairs, it seemed that we woke. After brushing my teeth and changing into pajamas, I decided to go hang out with Vinny in the living room for a while. We had some drinks and just watched funny YouTube videos on TV. My little sister, who was 14, was asleep by now. She didn't hang outside with the party because she was too young. We were being quiet so as not to wake her, but when Vinny and I both heard noises from upstairs, it seemed that we woke her up. I was expecting the sounds, which sounded like footsteps, to move to the bathroom or something. I got a little confused when I never heard my sister's door open. I decided to go upstairs just to check on her. I knocked on her door, and she didn't answer. I opened it a crack and saw that she was sleeping. So what were those sounds I was hearing then? I went to my parents' room and realized the door wasn't clicked shut. I was able to just push it open without twisting the doorknob, which was odd because I made sure their door was closed before the party. I looked inside the room without turning on the lights. Then, as I backed out of the room, I looked through the crack of the door, and on the other side, I saw that guy in the skeleton bodysuit. I made no mistake, I knew what I was looking at. I'm impressed with myself for not running or screaming. I pretended I didn't see him and pulled the door closed. Then I went downstairs and told Vinny that the guy from before is in the house. I had him call 911 and tell them that there's an intruder in the house while I tiptoed back upstairs to my sister's room, went inside, and shook her to wake her up. I explained to her what was going on and made sure she would be quiet while following me downstairs. She did a good job not freaking out either. When we were downstairs, we met Vinny in the kitchen by the back door, where we went outside to the backyard. Then we cut through the side to the front and went to our neighbor's house, ringing the bell at least 3 times. Our neighbor let us wait with him for the police, but at some point before the police got there, that guy escaped through our parents' bedroom window. I know because the window was now open. Their closet door was also open, where my dad keeps his safe. It's as if it were someone who knew about the safe being there that tried breaking into it or just taking the whole safe out from the floor. It was obvious how the man broke in. He simply just walked into the party. Again, it could have been any number of people, though we never found out who it was. But it was someone who knew I was having a party, someone older, and someone who knew about my parents' safe. My sister ended up telling our parents about it, and obviously, that was the last party I was ever allowed to throw at their house. That guy escaped through our parents' bedroom window. I know because the window was now open. Their closet door was also open, where my dad keeps his safe. It's as if it were someone who knew about the safe being there that tried breaking into it or just taking the whole safe out from the floor. It was obvious how the man broke in. He simply just walked into the party. Again, it could have been any number of people, though we never found out who it was. But it was someone who knew I was having a party, someone older, and someone who knew about my parents' safe. My sister ended up telling our parents about it, and obviously, that was the last party I was ever allowed to throw at their house. My group of friends and I went to a local county haunted house attraction. It was by the edge of town and opened every October. Appropriately, it was situated right by the woods and had 3 attractions: the main haunted house, a corn maze, and a haunted trail through the woods. I guess I'll name my friends now, Rod, James, and Bud. That's not his real name, just his nickname. We started with the haunted house, which was decently high quality and had a few good scares, and then we made our way to the corn maze. The corn maze started out kind of slow, with just a lot of turns through the corn we had to make. But then the scary antics began. A guy dressed as a freaky scarecrow emerged from the corn and screamed at us, causing us to scream as well. He started to chase after us, and we ran. I was in the back, of course, and the scarecrow was right behind me. Even knowing it's just a paid actor, you have this innate fear of something chasing after you, where you just feel like you have to run away. Somehow, through the thrill of running away through the corn, I lost all of my friends. It seemed like all of us ran in different directions. I lost the scarecrow man, though, and got back to the trail between the crops. This is where the nightmare began. I called, yelled, and screamed for my friends as I made wrong turn after wrong turn. They never called back. In fact, it seemed there were no other visitors in sight. I had to finish the maze by myself. What choice did I have? I walked and walked for what felt like 20 minutes and heard bustling in the corn in front of me. I slowed my pace and kind of tiptoed past the noise, but it was pointless. Something reached out from the corn and grabbed my wrist and squeezed it tight. I actually cried out in pain and yelled, "Stop, you're hurting me." I was in shock at how hard this paid actor was squeezing my wrist. Then he tried pulling me into the crops. I didn't see who it was. I just saw his hand and arm covered by a black coat sleeve and black glove. I yanked myself out from the grip and backed away as the actor came out from the crops into the path. He was wearing a heavy winter coat, black jeans, and a blank black face mask. I didn't know what the costume was supposed to be, but I literally yelled, "Go yourself, you actually hurt me." He started running at me, and naturally, I turned and ran as fast as I could through the corn to lose him. I yelled back, "I'm reporting you," and I quickly lost him. After 5 minutes of running straight through the corn as opposed to following the maze of trails, I came to the edge of the maze and went to find an employee. I reported the actor to the employee, saying he used way too much force to the point that my wrist actually hurt. The employee said he wasn't sure who was wearing the specific costume I described, but that he'd look into it. I thanked him, and then I looked at my phone. I had a missed call from James. I called him back to ask where the three of them were. He said they tried finding me, then gave up and went to the haunted trail in the woods. I said I'd meet them and hung up. I walked over to the start of the trail, where they had the Halloween ambience blasting through a bunch of speakers placed throughout. I stepped into the woods, feeling like I was the only one around besides my friends. I tried playing catch up to my friends when I stopped in my tracks after spotting him again blocking the path. It was the guy in the coat and black mask. He didn't even give me time to react or say something. Right away, he started legit charging full speed at me. I turned right and ran into the woods, expecting to lose him easier this time. I called back, "I'm calling the police." I wasn't actually, but I thought that might get this guy to just leave me alone. I ran deeper into the woods until I didn't hear him chasing me anymore. Then I sat down on the root of a tree to catch my breath. I had time to think, and one of my thoughts was, did that guy really follow me from the corn maze to here? Then I heard footsteps approaching, and of course, at that exact moment, my iPhone started ringing. I silenced my phone, but now the footsteps had stopped. I pushed myself up off the root quietly and leaned to the side to get a view past the tree. It looked clear. I started to run back towards the path of the attraction and immediately spotted him to my right. I said to myself, "Screw it. I stopped and told him, "I'm suing the place because of you," but he didn't stop running at me. He got to me and pushed me to the floor. I didn't expect it. I was once again in shock. I got back up as fast as I could before he could get on top of me and booked it. He chased me, but when I got back to the path towards the entrance of the attraction, he stopped and turned around. I went straight to the little front office shack and asked for a manager. Some older guy greeted me, and I told him about the guy who was chasing me and attacking me. The man said they didn't have any actors wearing that specific attire. So he called the police. Eventually, I got my friends to meet me where I was. I stayed to describe the incident to the police when they showed up. I didn't have any marks to show them, but they still took a report, and the place was closed for the night. We all went home after that. I haven't been to any haunted attractions ever since. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.